really been an amazing couple of days, and I'm just overwhelmed. I think it's really been fun, and I do think I'm just going to take this opportunity before I do my introduction to say thank you to all of those, to the key organizations who organized it, but to everybody in the room for participating. It's so amazing to see this energy and the positive feelings in the room. And I'm just really privileged and happy to be able to be here and also to be able to sponsor the session. I wanted to share one comment that was made in the priority 2, the finance section. I don't know if Derek Gent is still in the room, but he actually said something. Oh, he's way at the back. But he said something this morning that I can't get out of my head. And he said, I used to think I lived in a society. Now I think I live in an economy. And I just thought it was so amazing to think about how our dialogue has all changed into this economic piece. And of course, it's somewhat important. But with all the dreaming and all of the calls to action, I have to say I really do hope that we can change that, because I found that really profound. Anyway, on to my task at hand. Chers amis, il me fait un très grand plaisir.
I am pleased to introduce you Miss Julie Payette, a woman whose accomplishments continue to impress me.
An astronaut. She's actually been in space twice and logged 611 hours in space. I've always wondered what it must be like to be up there. And I just think that must be so amazing. Julie is a musician. She's sung with the L'Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal and Tafel Music Baroque in Toronto. She's an engineer. She has engineering degrees, a Master of Engineering. She has many honorary degrees. I think there's about 21 degrees on her resume. She's a member of the Order of Canada. She's on the board of Queen's University. And she's a member of Canada's Own the Podium program. And talk about an ambitious program, and look what we did in Vancouver and what we're hoping for in London. It really is an example of how people, when they dream, can move forward. In 2011, just this year alone, she's been a public policy scholar at the Woodrow Wilson Institute or School in Washington, and she's been appointed the Scientific Authority for Quebec in Washington on behalf of Quebec's Department of Economic Development, Innovation and Export Trade. So who better to draw this amazing conference to a close and to remind us that we must act and that we must dare to dream. Julie, je parle au nom de tout le monde ici.
I speak on behalf of everyone here in attendance by wishing you a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, bon après-midi.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be with you this afternoon during this summit. I feel at home almost, because you have as many acronyms as we have in NASA. And I wouldn't dare try to pronounce them either. Today is the second of 2 days of a summit that was absolutely fantastic, according to many comments. This will give rise to a lot of work for you.
You go, it is important to just relax, sit back, and see that, you're not the only ones that have big dreams, big projects, and are working hard to make them happen together. The comment about that she lived in a society and that other people thought, no, you live in an economy, well, they're all wrong. You guys live on a planet. It's called the planet Earth. And 50 years ago, it was impossible for us to even think we would be able to go and see it from a distance. But we do now. And I'd like to invite you right now to explore it with me on a very special platform called the International Space Station. À la fin, si nous avons du temps.
At the end, if we have any time, I'd be very pleased to take a few questions in the language of your choice. And I've got a flight in Ottawa, so I wouldn't be keeping you too long. Est-ce qu'on peut faire jouer la vidéo?
Thank you. Construction. Well, that's what we're doing in space. This is the morning of the 15th of July, 2009. The crew of STS-127, Space Transportation System. The person, I'm going to point to the right-hand screen because I can't do both at the same time, is walking to the pad for the 6th time because we're trying to launch a fully loaded space shuttle in the middle of July in South Florida, which is basically a factory for thunderstorms. And you don't launch fully loaded space vehicles and lightning at the same time. Here in the middle is the flight engineer, Julie Payette. You might know her. Finally, it's the right day. Buckle your seatbelt. Sound, please.
Over main engine start. Engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour. Completing TiVo and fulfilling Japan's hope for an out-of-this-world space laboratory. Roger, roll Endeavour.
$2.2 million of fuel propelling the space shuttle to space. The ride takes 8.5 minutes. I repeat, 8.5 minutes to go to space. But we accelerate from 0 to 28,000 kilometers per hour. That's 28,000 kilometers per hour, 25 times the speed of sound. 8.5 minutes later, we shut down our engine. We get rid of the big tank. We don't need it anymore. Detach from it. And here we are, in space. Once we get there, we have to get to work immediately. Open the cargo bay of the space shuttle so that we can cool our equipment and start deploying our antenna, reconfiguring our computers, and basically set up the tent into the spacecraft that will be our home for the next 16 days. It's very critical that we work together at the time because it's very choreographed. But look at the view. Not bad. Inside, pandemonium, complete. The cockpit crew, of which I was a part of, we are very busy turning the rocket into the spaceship. Below, the others are setting up the camp. And our first task is to basically chase the International Space Station, which is on orbit of the Earth, 350 kilometers above the surface all the time, 365 days a year. So as we approach, as you can see, our cargo bay is completely full of equipment. We're a construction mission. We're coming with equipment to outfit the International Space Station. We're one of the last construction flight. Well, just before we're going to do a little flip, this is highly fast-forwarded. Clearly, we don't flip that fast. The point here is to expose the underbelly of the space shuttle to the camera of the astronauts inside the International Space Station so they can photograph it, send it back down to the engineers so that we can make sure there's no breach that was caused during the launch period that would prevent us from coming back safely on Earth at the end of the mission. And then we carefully proceed and then line ourselves to that little circle here, which is our port of attachment to the International Space Station. And oops, here we are. Two big, several hundred tons of vehicle together in space. We do some leak check, open the hatch, and then wow, party. We're so glad to see each other. The International Space Station is a scientific laboratory that mostly conducts basic science. So it is not your average Delta Ottawa City Center hotel, and it looks a little different. So let's take a little tour. This is the view from the window of the cockpit of the space shuttle. Now we're going to push ourselves with our hands, because we're in weightlessness and we float. We're in the lower deck of the space shuttle. You know this girl. Actually, if you see a girl in this video, it's me. Then we turn a 90-degree and continue on until the junction between the space shuttle and the International Space Station. Here we're entering. This is an international station, so we have modules that were fabricated in different countries by different people, even under different measurement systems. Because, as you remember, right, our friends in the United States are still using the imperial system, so are the friends in the UK and a few other places, whereas everybody else on the metric. This is my colleague Bob Thursky, Canadian. Inside here we're in the Japanese module. It's a real Cadillac. This is a storage unit. Actually, my sleeping bag is right up there. Haha. This is where I camped during the time we were on the space station. We have 2 portholes in that particular module that have a very good view of the structure outside the space station. So we're floating back in, out of the Japanese module. This is a European module. Whoops, someone. Okay, just push them out of the way. And now we're entering the Destiny American Laboratory. This very funny looking white booth is a sleep station for the astronauts that are spending 6 months on the space station. They need a bit of privacy, during that long period of time. We saw an astronaut doing some stationary bike. Because in weightlessness we do not use our legs and muscles the way we do on the ground, we need to do exercise every day, otherwise we wouldn't be able to walk when we come back. Here we are looking at the airlock, which is the chamber that we decompress in order to go outside in a big spacesuit. Here, interestingly, we've just crossed a very important boundary in the space station. It's the boundary between the American section and the Russian section. We're currently in the first of the Russian modules, and we're proceeding into the second one, looking as we go by into the corridors that lead to the 2 lifeboats that are permanently attached to the station. They're called Soyuz capsules. What's cool about it is that, unlike on Earth, as we pass by, we did not have to show a visa or a passport. And everybody can use anything. We share all the time. It's not, because it's the municipality or the provincial government or this or that. It's all everybody's. That is one of the lessons that is pretty cool about up there. This particular mission, as I mentioned, was a construction mission. We were there attached to the space station for 11 days, and our job was to empty the cargo bay of the space shuttle and put our equipment on the space station. To do that, be proud, we used 2 space cranes that have several times the name Canada on it. The Canadarm attached to the space shuttle, and in all its beauty right now, the Canadarm2, which is permanently attached to the International Space Station. We can't position a piece of equipment directly with one of the arms. We need to do a handoff, which we would, of course, call a Canadian handshake of robotic arms. I did say that things are highly accelerated in this video because there's much to show and little time. Highly accelerated is a euphemism because we actually go real slowly when we are moving several hundred tons of equipment nearby the structure there. Especially if you're Canadian at the hem of the Canadarm, you don't want to become famous for being the first one that rammed the International Space Station with a piece of equipment and caused damage, right? There's other ways to gain your salary. So here we are. We had 3 different robotic arms. And what is interesting about the way we do operation in space is we never, ever work alone unless it's totally non-critical, like turning a light switch on or off. We always work in teams, of 2 at least. For very critical aspects like flying the space shuttle to the International Space Station, then we're 4 or 5 in the cockpit, actively working in a choreographed and cohesive manner. The reason is that we're all humans and we all make mistakes. And in order to alleviate the chances that you will make a mistake, the best way to do that is to have more than one pair of brain and set of eyes. Once the robotic folks have installed pieces of equipment, then we send what I call the big guys who will go into their spacesuit and go outside, use the dexterity of the human hand in order to finish the work, connect the cables, and basically make sure that the system will work to the space station. To do that, we cram them into a small little hole. You see the feet of the first one. We close the door, depressurize, and off they go. They come out on the other side. What an amazing day at work. Of course, the robotics folks are handy at work because we also use the robotic crane as a transportation mechanism for the spacewalker, but also as a platform onto which they can anchor their feet so that they can put pressure on their bolting tools. Because you see, the problem with weightlessness is as soon as you push in one direction, you're floating in the other direction at an equal force. It's just Newton in all perfectness. Look at this. This is the background. Our task was to finish a scientific platform for the Japanese, but mostly to install spares, because we do a lot of planning, just like you do in your organization. Since it's kind of difficult to reach and to go and resupply, and there's no Home Depot or grocery store nearby, then we have to bring everything in a very careful way. We are also very limited with storage. So we have to decide, and we do that on the ground with many people, which spare piece we're going to put up there and which are not as critical and can stay on the ground. So we brought a spare antenna, a spare fuel pump for our electrical system, and then we replaced the batteries of our electrical system. Here is one of them. You see, that's not your typical AA. It's about the size of it's a huge battery, and we had to replace several of them. The way we generate electricity is quite clever. We catch the sun rays through those huge antenna. There's 4 pairs of them through a photovoltaic cell, and the sun rays are then converted into energy inside the space station. However, the space station goes around the Earth every hour and a half, spending half of it in darkness, just like it. Oh, by the way, that was intentional. And no, it's not a space debris. It's since come back into the atmosphere and completely disintegrated. So half of that 1 hour and a half orbit is spent in darkness and the other half in the sun rays. Well, clearly, if you're using the sun rays to generate electricity, that wouldn't work really well for 45 minutes. So that's why we need the batteries. But just like anybody on a trip, we have our cameras and we take pictures of ourselves in various functions so that we can show our children. Can you imagine your day at work and this is what you're seeing in the background? Pretty cool. Look what they're holding here. This is a tether. We call it a safety tether. Very important. And that's what ties you to the space station. You do not want to become a spaceship of your own in that spacesuit. There's something really cool about being able to go about in weightlessness. At first, I can assure you, it takes a bit of learning, and we're totally ungraceful. We usually don't show these videos, but you can become Superman if you want to. All you have to do is push a little bit and let go. You can even pirouette and turn around. Whoop, don't try this at home. It's really a lot of fun, very different than anything earthbound and gravity-bound creatures have experienced. Clearly, on this particular mission, we had 6 people on board the station. We were 7 on board the Space Shuttle Endeavour, making a whole total of 13. And no, we weren't jinxed by that. And we, at night, would all congregate together and share some food. The food was very good. They're not pills, and they're not weird. It's actually normal food, but it's often dehydrated. We rehydrate with our water system, and then we just wait a little bit and then open the package and eat. But you see, you can put your tortilla, breakfast tortilla. Here, there's a bit of rehydrated eggs that are floating. Actually, there is etiquette on board an International Space Station. If you see something edible floating in front of you, you eat it. Because otherwise you have to vacuum the filter, and there would be like scrambled eggs and God knows what else in there. At the end of the 11 days, the 13 people got together for a final press conference. This is the kind of mission you didn't hear probably much about because it actually went really well. And there was nothing spectacular or juicy for a lot of people to talk about, other than this was a continuum in a very long, highly planned, collaborative project that yielded this. The International Space Station. Here it is in all its glory. It's the size of 2 football fields, the volume of a 4-bedroom house. It is constructed in one of the harshest possible place outside the atmosphere of the Earth, and by a collaboration of 5 space agencies: Russia, the US, Canada, Japan, and 15 countries of the European Space Agency. It is, right now, at this day, the greatest and the most bold engineering endeavor that humanity has ever undertaken. And it is working all the time, with people on board as we speak, who relay each other in order to conduct scientific experiment to advance knowledge that will benefit us right here on this planet. Maybe another lesson to bring back from what's happening up there. I also call it the UN working somehow, because again, we don't hear much about it. Why? Because it's working. The last few pictures that we're seeing now, we just saw a couple of things shooting out of the cargo bay of the space shuttle. There's one more here. There are little educational satellites that students could track. They were highly reflective, so with a small satellite, students could track that from the ground and then learn about orbital mechanics. This that you see here, that blue line, thin blue line, is the atmosphere of the Earth. The difference between life here and nothing out there. End of mission, the team gets back into the re-entry suits. I get back to my seat. We are moving around the Earth at 25 times the speed of sound, so as soon as we touch the upper layer of the atmosphere, we start burning up, literally outside. The gas superheat and then basically explode around us. We don't hear anything, we don't feel anything inside the cockpit, but gravity starts pressurizing us again. And it feels really heavy. You guys don't realize it, but my gravity is really heavy. We have no engines as we plummet back down into the ground. We've committed over the Indian Ocean, that is halfway around the Earth, to go and land at the Kennedy Space Center in South Florida. We just glide, and lose speed 10 seconds before we touch down. We deploy our gear, and at the small speed of 450 kilometers per hour, we touch down on this 5-kilometer long runway in South Florida. And here's Endeavour coming back. We're the 29th of July, 2009. Deploy the chute to slow down. Again, we had 1 in 1 chance to make that runway because there's no engines. And I can assure you that at that point, like any project, you're kind of proud to be part of a team. Here we are, we're standing up, we look firm, but we're not. We're quite shaky because we've just spent 16 days in weightlessness. But this is just a small part of a very, very big project, and the things you can do when you dare to dream. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you didn't, you're probably wondering, why an astronaut? You know, we understand that. That's pretty cool. She worked on the space station, and there were people from different countries. But you know what? What's the relation with us? Well, there's actually quite a lot. There is very little difference between people who work on things that they feel a passion for. Just like we believe in this project, several nations believed in this enormous project of the International Space Station. It was years in the making, and then years putting it together, and now it's fully operational. There was a lot of convincing to be done. Yes, we need to finance projects like that, just like you have to finance your dreams, your project, and the ways you want to go ahead and shape the future. Just like you. We, of course, even though we get the financing, we never have enough for all the projects, so we have to pick and choose. We have to set priorities. Just like you, we have to deal with different people, with diversity, with various different jurisdictions. And just like you, we strongly, strongly believe that working together as humans extending a hand to each other, instead of being enemies, being friends. And that the sum of all of us as a team is greater than the sum of us as individual makes a huge difference. So you are, in a way, astronaut dreamers, just like we are. And there is more to do. It will never stop. Human beings will never stop exploring and pushing wherever the frontier is, pushing it further. This is intrinsic into human nature. We've been doing that for several centuries, if not millenniums, and we'll continue to do that. And just in some ways, you do very similar because you are pushing the frontier of what we can do to help each other in the sector of helping hand, of providing, of making sure that people are participating. I really hope that if indeed you meet, maybe in 2 years from now, 4 years from now, that you will have a huge session that will talk about how you've turned your discussions into action in the last few words. And listening to some of the speech, I caught a bit at the end here, and speaking with Hillary Pearson, I thought, wow, this is so important for us as a society, what you are doing. It is so paramount that we redefine ourselves all the time. But it's also very, very important that we bring more people in. What you do is part of this society, but I think we should all be part of it in some way or another. So when you go back to your communities and to your cities all over the country, why don't you launch a little campaign around and say, hey, everybody should be a volunteer. That will give a lot of work to your staff. For at least 1 hour a day, or 1 hour a year. That's not much to do. But can you imagine what we could do as Canadians if all 35 million of us would put 1 hour a year, at least, going to speak to schools about education and volunteering? Well, maybe I'm a daydreamer. Anyway, this is really all I wanted to say today. And if we have a bit of time, I would love to entertain a few questions. Je vous remercie de votre attention. Et
thank you for your attention.
Always dare to dream. Thank you. Thank you. Please. Any questions? I can't see because I have the spotlight, but I guess not. I can't. Too big of a crowd, right? You're looking for it, Ian?
I think they're trying to get one right there.
Okay, well, I'll come up with a question if you... Oh, you have some? Okay, wonderful.
I have the question. I don't have the mic.
Oh.
Merci. So one of the first questions we have for Julie is, are you ever afraid? And how do you deal with the emotional side of space travel? I suspect, this person says, some of us feel we are in outer space at times, though the dangers are obviously not as acute.
Well, thanks. Let me say first that we are afraid all the time. We're afraid of one thing in particular, and I think I mentioned it during the video, is we are afraid of making a mistake. That is the one thing that drives us all the time. There are mistakes that could be extremely damageable to our lives, but even that, you're part of a team. And one of the things that you do through the years of training and some sacrifice, but mostly a good time preparing for a space mission, is that you learn that you're not important. You as an individual, as a person, is secondary. It's the team, it's the objectives, it's the mission, and the goal of all this that is important. And then you learn that in order to be a good team member, you've got to take care of yourself and you've got to be competent at what you do. That's what you control. So make sure you're not going to have this or that. You have a headache, take something. Don't mention it, go to work. Because we're there 16 days and there's a whole big team and choreography that needs you there as much as possible. The other aspect is be competent. People, when they know what they're supposed to do and have the good training and education and preparation, will accomplish extraordinary things. So we're just afraid that we will not deliver what we're supposed to deliver and let down the team. And that's the biggest fear. As far as the emotional side, unfortunately, and I don't know how many engineers there are in the room, but I'm certainly one of them, we tend to not be very eloquent on questions like that. It's extraordinary. The planet, I cannot tell you how amazingly beautiful it is to see from 350 kilometers above. It is blue and white. It has a myriad of shades of blue. It's like a ball of marble with a backdrop of infinity. And that thin, thin blue line of an atmosphere that surrounds us and makes us be able to live on this planet. It's coming. Commercial space flight is at our door. Maybe in the next decade we'll start seeing a lot of people going up. And I'm pretty sure my children will go to space, at least to see the planet. And once we do all go, I think we're not going to treat it exactly the way we are just now. Somehow. Thank you.
Another question we have for you is, what is it that interested you most in terms of the pursuit of becoming an astronaut? And perhaps in terms of your training, what best prepared you for collaborative work?
First question, how many here in this room remember Apollo 11 landing on the moon? Well, I don't. It is not because I wasn't born, I was. But I don't remember because my mom told me that I probably was in bed. However, I do remember, I love telling that story in the U.S. particularly, because I do remember sitting in a classroom in a primary school in Montreal and watching some of these missions to the moon, which happened only between 1969 and 1972. The last mission, Apollo 17, was in 1972. And I remember seeing and thinking, wow, I want to do that. I want to put the spacesuit on and I want to go on the rocket. I wanted to drive the lunar Jeep particularly. I bought one since, but it's just an ordinary Jeep. And it didn't cross my mind then that especially in 1970-some, I was the wrong nationality, I was the wrong gender, I didn't even speak a word or understand a word they were saying, these people. I mean, nobody in my family was military or flew jets. But it didn't matter because when you're 10-year-old, you see something and you say, well, why not me? And that's what happened. I just thought this was the coolest thing, and mostly, and some people in this room will relate to that, after that, when I would say that this is what I wanted to do, even though it didn't make any sense and my chances of doing it were slim, but there. Nobody in my family, and my mother and father in particular, discouraged me. They never said, well, you're never going to be, No, they said, well, you want to be an astronaut? Go to school and work. And I think that was a hugely important message that can be translated everywhere. And you're asking me what prepared me to be in a collaborative, I think that large families in Quebec, huh? But the other thing that I would say I was very, very grateful for, and some people in this room will relate to that, is that in 1976, the Olympics came to And that was for me, I was 13 at the time, an eye-opener. I realized there was a world out there and that it was very colorful, that it spoke different languages, and all these people that were so good and so extraordinary made me really want to believe that I was not just a citizen of Montreal, of Quebec, of Canada, but of this entire world that we inhabit. And I'm very glad I am. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's it.
Merci beaucoup.
You have a good session.
Mesdames et messieurs, Julie Payette. Ooh, I just left my body for about 25 minutes there. I was like, wow, that was amazing. Incroyable, incroyable. Merci, merci tellement.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Marcel Lausière to officially thank Mrs. Payette.
Wow.
Mrs. Payette, this is quite an honor. Thank you so much. You made us travel and dream in spite of the age of some among us.
So relevant to what we have been talking about. And I'm not sure that we would have thought of that, of having an astronaut like you come in and speak to us after the 2 days of work that we've been doing, to hear you speak, to talk about things that are so relevant that will make us think, I hope, for a long time in terms of how we do our work and how we often find that the problems we have are unique to us. They clearly are not. Your passion around collaboration and around mission is wonderful. It will inspire us. That's what we were hoping. And the fact that you are saying that we are all astronaut dreamers, of course, makes our day. Merci beaucoup.